if you go around Europe, virtually every country, France, Portugal, Spain, Italy, have declining populations as a result of lack of children being born. And so apparently you have to have on average 2.1 children in order to sustain a population, and virtually all those countries, including the Scandinavian countries, have
under two. All under
two. So they have declining populations, and there's all sorts of surveys being done. And it's a major issue. Meloni herself in Italy has always been one of the worst at this in terms of generating children. Is trying to bring in incentives to get more, and said, we need to have more children. However, the positive news for Britain is our population is increasing, and we are expected to have, and I can't remember how many years it will be in the future, 70 million people here very shortly, which is fantastic news, Nick, because...
All immigration.
Because it's fantastic news, because we'll have a young population, they'll be able to work, whatever, so all these, all this negativity about immigration and stuff, forget all that, Nick. We're the only country in Europe that's got an increasing population, so we need to celebrate with a cup of tea or a beer.
Well, Nigeria has something like 130 million people in Nigeria.
Yes.
And over half of them are under 25.
Yeah.
Is that doing that country any good? No. So I'm tired of people telling me, first of all, that a declining birth rate's a problem. It's not a problem. It's just we've got a declining birth rate. It means we need to relook at our economy, we need to relook at our services, we need to do things better, cleverer. It's a problem. If it is a problem, that needs fixing, and we'll fix it. Mass migration is not the answer to it. It's a sticking plaster. So what happens with mass migration? Right, we import 10 million people. Right, that's great. What happens in 40 years' time? All those new 10 million people are now retired, all need looking after. So we need to bring in another 50 million now? It's a Ponzi scheme where the country eventually collapses upon itself because we've let too many people in the country. We just need to look at why we have a problem. We've got 5 million people sat on benefits. There's 5 million workers. And we need to industrialise our farming so we don't need labourers on farms. All these things don't need inventing. They're already existing. We just won't invest the money in it, and we won't give businesses the certainty to invest. Because why would you as a business invest £2 million to automate your farm, and then we say to you the next year, do you know what, we're not going to quit immigration? And you go, well, that's unfair. I'm £2 million in debt now, and the farm next door is using cheap labour and is beating me on cost because you told me last year you were getting rid of all cheap immigrant labour. So businesses won't invest unless there's a guarantee you're not going to screw us next year, because this is a lot of money. So if we can convince businesses they'll automate, which is better paid, less jobs, but better paid jobs, and we can plan ourselves out of this. Immigration will not solve these problems.
Yeah, and interestingly on that, the Industrial Revolution, which began in Britain, was driven by technology and not people.
Yep.
The people came after the technology. The success of the industrial
and it increased the population.
Correct, and the population increased, and that population made the country far more affluent. That's how the Industrial Revolution worked. So the Industrial Revolution didn't work on the basis of more people coming in. It worked on the basis of technology, innovation, and efficiency of production, basically. And interestingly, at the same time as the Industrial Revolution was happening in Britain, in England, in America, in the southern part of America, they decided to increase their production by bringing in more slaves. Yeah. And that ended up in an absolute mess, basically. Well, because actually the north...
What's the poorest part of the United States?
Southern, yeah. Because the north, of course, the Civil War in America, the north was far more powerful, far more advanced technologically and richer, because they didn't rely on slave labour. They relied on industrialisation and the Industrial Revolution there as well. So they became a lot more powerful, but better armed, and that's why they won the Civil War. And you're right, the South now is still but they were relying, obviously it's not immigration, it's bringing in slaves, but they were bringing people.
Cheap labour, that's what slaves are. Very cheap labour.
Yeah.
And we're doing the same now, and it's a type of modern slavery what we're doing now. And especially when you look at the NHS. The NHS goes around the world stealing medical workers. So we'll go to the poorest countries in the world and we will steal their medical workers. So we leave those countries poorer and less able to look after their people, and we bring them here. Why? Because the government will not fund more places for British people to be doctors and nurses. People don't know. There's a limit of how many nurses we train every year. Every year the British government have to turn down so many tens of thousands of applicants for nurse because we haven't got the places for you. So we just go and steal them from somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's absolutely appalling what our NHS does. And I've got a friend who works in the NHS, or did work in the NHS, and he said the racism in the NHS is absolutely staggering.
Really?
And he says, and hardly ever any of it is caused by white English people. It's all inter-ethnic racism.
Yeah.
He goes, and he spent most of his time dealing with racism in the NHS. That 99% of it is not caused by white English people. If you like that video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell and comment. And if you like what I'm saying about running for Mayor of Greater Manchester, then stick around. Tell your family, tell your friends. The only way I'm going to have a chance of winning is a grassroots movement. So be part of that movement and hit that bell. Thanks.